The size of this industry globally is $200+ billion. And the health and happiness of society is the lowest it's ever been. These two things should be going together, not opposite. That is where we are failed. The consumer, they're going to start asking more and more questions because every brand says we're the best. We do quality, but very few brands actually do it. And consumers know that. They just don't know where to look and why to trust. It's the reason why Supco crushes. It's because people are curious and they don't know where to find independent information. Just because you're made in a GMP facility doesn't mean jack. And just because you have a COA also doesn't mean jack. I will never have a problem putting my money where my mouth is. Test it. Please do, right? And if we need to make it better, let's go. Because that's the only way you get better. And it's not hiding behind the shroud of we're made in a GMP facility. I'm like, guys, that means you're not made in a bathtub. Like, that's a pretty low bar.
Welcome to Inside the Formula, a Supco original series where we go behind the science of supplements that have earned the Tested by Supco certification. Each episode, I sit down with the formulators, chemists, and scientists behind these products to find out what it actually takes to make a supplement that works. I'm Jordan Glenn, head of science at Supco. What happens when you keep looking for a quality product and can't find one that works for you? That is exactly what happened to Jeff Byers. After retiring from the NFL, he never wanted to start a supplement company, but he saw how problematic the industry was and he knew something better needed to exist. And now he sits as CEO of Momentous, bringing elite level rigor to consumers in their everyday lives. Before we begin, an important reminder. Tested by Supco is an independent certification program that Supco offers as part of its business model. Brands featured in this series have paid fees to have their products analyzed by the tested program, which tests the products that consumers actually want to buy to verify their active ingredient claims. Test results are published transparently, pass or fail, and cannot be influenced. Today's episode includes a brand partner. And now, my conversation with Jeff Byers. Jeff, so you've been doing this for a while, but you didn't set out to do supplements. I want to hear about the origin story of your company and how it turned into what it is today.
Yeah. I mean, when people are like, how did Momentous start? I was like, well, not how you think. My co-founder and I, Erica, started at an early stage biotech in 2015 together. And we were doing some really unique things in the biotech space around the transporting of drugs through the skin. And we had this crazy idea that we could use the same technology to deliver non-drugs through the skin, basic molecules that could potentially affect performance. And that led us down this like little Skunkworks project. And we got a little traction and a little more traction in the really, really elite spaces in sport in the US military. And then in 2018, her and I decided, let's spin out this little Skunkworks project and create what we called the next great high performance company. And we won a $1.5 million contract with the Department of Defense to further clinically validate and study this product. It's called PR Lotion, and bring it to life. And at that time, we were working with the really elite athletes and sporting teams, and then we had a really little consumer niche in endurance, right? Kind of where it trickled over. And that was the start of the business, the underlying entity behind Momentous. And we kept building it and knew we had a really unique thing because we were in the hardest places to get. But we were doing not supplements, right? And we didn't set out to be a supplement company. We were trying to be an elite high performance company. And we tried to buy a few different businesses that we could bolt on and leverage our access and some of our know-how. But it became really clear that we needed to think about product differently and industry differently as a whole. And I had a board that was like, you need to go into nutrition and supplements. And I was like, hell no. Right. As an ex-NFL player, the space is so messy and dirty. It's like, I used a brand and it's like, that's what I used, right? Because I trusted it. But there's so much, bro science and trinket and pinkett and marketing companies out there. And then there's so many like very clinical-esque brands. And for us, and for me, there was nothing spoke to me as a consumer. I trust quality, but there was no brand that I was like, that's what I want. And I just didn't feel good about becoming a supplement company, especially when you are funded kind of by the Department of Defense early on and you're doing clinical research. You're like, oh, cool, we're going to create another protein powder, just what the world needs, right? The world doesn't need another supplement company, I realized. And that was kind of when I was looking at the mirror at myself, that's what I realized. But then it was it doesn't need another supplement company. It needs a better supplement company.
Mm.
Right. And that was this aha moment. And that was in early 2021. And we started going down the path, Jordan. And what I realized is really easy to create a supplement company. Like, could do it tomorrow. Really hard, like incredibly hard to do the standards of the people that we trust and work with. And ultimately what happened is I got connected to this little brand called Momentous. And they were about the same size, like pretty early, but they were working in the most elite places and they were built within pro sports. And so basically their first consumers were NFL teams and all of that. And they were built solely based upon quality and efficacy, right? And sourcing. And they'd figured out all of this certification and testing and sourcing the supply chain that is so hard, that takes so long, and that is very, very expensive. And basically what I said was like, okay, if we're going to go into place, this is automatic authenticity in the categories we already play, right? And we get to bypass all this messy, like, where do we go? What are the right ingredients? All things we didn't know. So we acquired a ton of know-how, and they were already trusted in the places that we were trusted by. And that was in the middle of 2021. We did that. And it was just like this little sports nutrition company. And what we realized really quickly is you kind of took some of the unique access that we had at the under of the company we started, Momentous, and then this vision to do it different, right? Of like, the world does not need another supplement company. We need less, actually, but it needs something better, right? It needs a leader and a voice. And that was kind of like, oh, we could hold ourselves to the highest standards that these NFL and professional teams hold. And we could bring that to the market because the consumer actually wants quality, right? We made that prediction early on, right? And we just believed our category wasn't ready for it. And so that was this genesis. And then through partnerships of like this trust in the most elite spaces spun off all these influential people that have helped shape, right, health and wellness over the last 3 to 5 years, that they've become our partners and trust us because the people they trust us. And that just like kept spinning this out. And for me, trust is earned every day, right? And lost very quickly. And like this staying at the forefront of high performance has been who we are. Because if we can build products that are trusted by the best, most elite discerning humans, that's good enough for consumers, right? Not anything else.
See, I love that. And you talked about trust there at the end. And I think this is what I've heard you say specifically, that trust takes years to build and seconds to lose. And I think that's a very, very important component of any brand. But how does that shape the decisions that you make in the long run versus like what would be an easy win today?
Yeah. I mean, certifications are hard, right? And true certifications. And I mean, I guess some of the examples of like, we choose to go out of stock of product versus not bring products to market, versus bringing products to market that don't meet our certifications, our standards, not the industries as a whole. So like our multivitamin, right, is one of the very few multivitamins that's NSF Certified for sport, which is a certification that we require every batch to have because our products go into sport. And we failed 3 production runs in a row this year, and we were out of stock for 4 months. And that's about $800,000 in revenue. There was nothing wrong with it. It just didn't meet our spec, right? And when it doesn't meet our spec, our choices are, right, either start this path as a brand, just loosen your standards, which is my opinion, how you die as a brand, or you say short term, we're going to take a little kick in the teeth here from a revenue perspective, but long term brand matters, and our brand is built on trust and doing the right thing. And so consumers don't always see like, oh, Momentous is out of stock of multivitamin. It was solely because we had 3 batches, right? That one raw ingredient we could not get in the way that we wanted to fail. And that is completely normal, right? On who we are. It's very rare to happen 3 times in a row. And that's what got us in inventory trouble. Like one failed batch here or there doesn't hurt you because you always have enough inventory. Anyways, it's when you start stacking things. And so that's just like a decision of like, we won't bring that to market without our certification, period.
So talk to me a little bit more about that, right? So like 3 batches in a row are failing. you got internal testing going on, you got quality assurance going on across the board. Like, what does that process look for you guys when you're going raw material to finished product? Like, how it sounds like you're doing this in a different way than a lot of companies are, the way you're catching it. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, right, everybody in the industry, there's like this trust but verify component. It's like a military word, right? Like, you get your inbound COAs and you test it, right? And you have hopefully the best like processes in cleaning, and mixing, and when it comes to this manufacturing process. And then you have finished goods like bottling, and then finished goods. And a lot can happen in those timeframes of like, hey, like for us, we inbound test, right, raw ingredients, right? Our manufacturing partners and all of that do that because that's incredibly important, right? Or you could just trust the COA, right, which is very common, and then you put it in, right? So you do that, and you go through this process, and then when it's finished, a lot has changed from when it was a raw material that that shipped into a warehouse. It might have sat on the shelf for 6 months, right, before it went in, and then it mixed, and then it had to sit on the shelf again, right? And so all this change, and for us, this final step, is this trust but verify, like everything checked off along the way. If you don't know until it's finished, and things happen and things change, right, as a whole. And it was this one little ingredient that something was happening through the process, and we had to do this huge backwards look into lot control, right? What raws were coming in? Was it a different raw? You know, are we not storing in the right places, right? And so all of those things come, but ultimately, right, like the end of game certification is what matters, right? At the end, if you cannot meet that, then that product should not come. Doesn't matter all the steps, but the challenge in our industry, right, and what I love that SUPCO is doing and tested by SUPCO, right, is it's creating that visibility for consumers to say, great, you said you checked all the boxes, right? But what does the data say at the end? And that's what's important, right? Like these true third-party certifications actually tell and should be aware of the consumer. Like just because you're made in a GMP facility doesn't mean jack, right? And just because you have a COA also doesn't mean jack, right? And that's hard for consumers to actually realize, but you and I live this industry. Like having a COA, the basic COA that every company, when their product comes off a production run, has a COA. Every single company. It's actually one of the few requirements that the FDA puts on us. And the COA basically says this is not dangerous, right? Toxic heavy metal levels, right? Toxic E. coli, salmonella. That's what the COA is testing for, which is crazy.
Yeah. And so talking about, I think you make a very, very important point here in the sense that a lot happens in supplement manufacturing. And at the end of the day, all that matters is what you end up putting in your body at the end was on the shelf. And that is, I think, something that a lot of people don't think about. And one of the things that you guys talk a lot about with your specific products is this concept of the Momentous 3.
Yeah.
What is this and why is it so important to the Momentous brand?
Yeah. I get asked the same 3 questions almost exclusively from everybody I meet. The first question is, oh, what do you do? And it's like, I have a company called Momentous. We're a supplement company. And you automatically see their eyes roll. And they're like, oh, a supplement company guy. Because right, wrong, or indifferent, our industry is not well loved, well used, lots of money spent. And then it's like, here's why we're different. Here's how we're different, right? And you start talking about the people that we use and like the people that buy our products from the NFL teams and all these elite people in performance that we won 9 government contracts. And they're like, oh, it's a little like, you sound a little different than everybody else that I hear. And then they asked me this third question. Well, what do you take? And because nobody knows what to take. It's like, because there's so much noise in this world. It's like, or they're like, this is what I take. What else should I be taking? Or, and I found out really quick and I started telling people what I took. And like, I play in the NFL. I'm an ex-athlete, right? I worry about connective tissue health and brain health. And I'm like, you aren't me. I shouldn't be telling, my wife's friend what I take by any means. Like that is chaos. And so I'm not the smartest guy in the room, hardly ever, But I asked the smartest people that are on our advisory board, from the dietitians in pro and college sports to the top researchers and right people who lead health and wellness. I'm like, how would you answer this question? What would you tell like people? And it always came down to this very tight set of products, right? And kind of the criteria was, right, massive amounts of clinical data, right? No cross reactivity, and they have short and long-term performance gains, right? And they actually have like real gains, right? If you do them consistently over time. And those three products, right, unequivocally were protein, omegas, and creatine, right? And like protein, like it's kind of a hard one because protein is just like dehydrated milk. It's a food product on there. And that was like, okay, this is the core foundation. If you are not meeting these things, and yes, you can get them from your diet, but it's hard and impractical in many cases. But we know if you do these three things over time, they have long-term implications for long-term health. Also, right, you don't necessarily need to get blood work for them. Like 90+% of people will benefit from these, and they do no harm, right? Like, hey, if you have kidney disease, you should probably ask a doctor about creatine. But like in general, like there's a very broad base of evidence from a safety profile, right? No cross reactivity, and they actually drive impact. And so that's kind of where we started. And I used to call it the big three, right? And that became the Momentous three. And I was like, these are the three. And then we launched fiber, and there's now kind of a fourth, which fiber, is it a supplement? Yes and no, right? Supplemental. But then you think about like Vit D, magnesium, like all that stuff is either condition specific or blood work. Like the glorious thing about today is you don't need to guess if you have, deficiencies in any vitamin. You can just get it done pretty cheap. Like you can either get a vitamin D stick test, or you can like get a full panel and it will tell you, or you can say, I know X about me and I struggle to sleep, so I need some help sleeping. Or I have connective tissue health issues, AKA I've tore my ACL or whatever. So I'm going to take collagen, right? Like, right. These things are condition specific, but the core foundation, right, is built upon those 3 or 4 products. And, then you can stack on. But if you haven't mastered those and you aren't having the right behaviors, then health and wellness, like, then it's the supplement industry just making money, right?
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah,
Completely
instead of
agree with
making
you.
impact.
It's funny. I always say like one of the best and worst things that I've done is make my personal stack public as a result of Supco. Everyone can see what I'm taking. And it's funny because people want to skip the big 3 and they want the urolithin A's or the NAD pluses or like all these things that get so far from the foundational. And people ask me all the time, what do you take? What do you take? Well, it's like, I'm a very different supplement user than almost like the majority of the population. So I resonate with that very, very deeply of like, you need to have a very personal understanding. I always say you need to have a very personal understanding of why you're taking what you're taking, and it has to fit a specific goal that you are trying to solve. And I think if people started there, we'd be in a much different place when it comes to this industry.
Because if you don't have that, it's very easy to stop, right? And like everything in life, consistency is what drives results, right? It doesn't like, Greg, you took vitamin D for 3 weeks. Like, cool. Great, good for you, right? And then you have it sitting in your shelf. Like if you don't remember why you're taking the products that you're taking and you don't have a reason, you won't continue to take them. And taking omegas for 1 month clinically doesn't do anything.
Nope.
Right? Taking omegas for a long period of time at the right dosage has clinical evidence that it makes an impact in your health and wellness. Right? And I think that's the biggest thing is like, and also like you and I, like we live and breathe the industry. We're very different than the general consumer. And it's like, we can do PhD level stuff in supplements because A, we get a lot of things, and B, like we understand more than anybody. Like nobody's spending, like very few people are spending $4,000 on supplements a month. Right. And very few people should probably.
Man, I agree. I want to circle back to something you said a little bit earlier. You said that the supplement industry is not well liked, but it is well used. And I think that's a very interesting concept. And I agree with it fully. And so when you think about like consumers today, what is shaping purchasing habits? How do you think consumers are evolving as our industry is evolving?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think if you look at like the top quartile, it's shifting in a very different direction around transparency and quality and knowledge, right? Like as a whole. But at the end of the day, like the the growth trajectory, the revenue, the size of this industry globally is 100 plus billion, 200 plus billion dollars. And the health and happiness of society is the lowest it's ever been. And these two things should be going together,
Yep.
not this, not opposite. And that's where I'm just like, that is where we are failing. And I think the consumer is slowly making its way, right, to understand what matters and why it matters. But this has been a industry that's built on marketing, hype, crazy claims, proprietary blends, right? Over promising and under delivering. And therefore people like come in and out of this category so fast. It's like, oh, I took this for 2 days and then it didn't work. I forgot about it. And then I come back and like that drives zero impact, or they're investing in really low quality. Like when I first came in, it's like, oh, this industry is a commodity. Like it's just commodity driven. Just, it doesn't matter what you buy, what kind of protein you buy. And I was like, that can't be true. Right? That's not how, when I played in the NFL, that's not how teams bought things. They just didn't go buy the cheapest thing. They didn't go buy, right? They were looking specifically for certain things because of the quality that it had. Also the amount of active that it had that I think is so important. So I believe our market is growing because there's a bigger awareness around health and wellness. I don't think it's growing necessarily in the right way there. I think the top quartile of this industry, right, is shifting and graduating to what has been historically, right, like practitioner-led brands is the quality. And I think some of those brands have done a beautiful job coming out of that medical space and into the consumer space, which was very much needed. And they're leading from the front from quality. And they people need to be graduating up. And I think that top quartile is graduating up. They're asking questions. They're like, it's a reason why Subco crushes, right? Is because people are curious and they don't know where to find independent information. Because every brand says we're the best. We do quality. Like we certify. But very few brands actually do it. And consumers know that. They just don't know where to look and why to trust. And that's why like there's been these certifications out there, but they're kind of black boxy, right? Or they're not consumer friendly. It's like, I love NSF Certified for sport. Guess what? 95% or more of our customers aren't athletes, right? And they see that. They're like, oh, it's not for me. It's like, it's the highest certification that you can get in the places we live, right? But it doesn't have that trickle down. And so for us, right, like multiple certifications of our products is critically important because, right, I will never have a problem putting my money where my mouth is on this of like, test it. Please do, right? And if we need to make it better, let's go. Right? Because that's the only way you get better. And it's not hiding behind the shroud of we're made in a GMP facility. I'm like, guys, that means you're not made in a bathtub. Like that's a pretty low bar here. So
I like that. I like the not made in a bathtub comment. So we're sitting in 2026 now, 5-10 years down the line. Where's the supplement industry going to be? How are we going to evolve?
I think there's going to be there's a huge reckoning, right? As a whole, I think, this category is going to be looked at much deeper into proactive health and wellness, right? Oh, like whatever we call it, medicine 3.0, but like I think funds will be being diverted from like the medical channel, from insurance into preventative care, because we know what creatine, omegas, protein, fiber, and all these things can do, right, for long-term health and disease prevention. So I think there's going to be a big shift into that. And with that, I think, right, people are going to become more aware. I don't ever think there's going to get regulation. I don't think the FDA is ever going to come in, right? I think the consumer, right, as they think about this, not as like a maybe magic pill, but insurance, or like you're being rewarded for doing these good behaviors, they're going to start asking more and more questions. And you already see it now. And this is just like this bubbling to the surface of like, it used to be just, these small little people asking the questions, right? Around like, oh, are you certified? Or is this? But these are the front runners, right, that are asking this. And behind them is this huge wave. And the more and more consumers vote with their wallets, which they are today, the more and more quality matters. And that means more and more people will up level. So I think over the next 5 to 10 years, you'll really like some of these, it'll be harder to build a brand in this space, right? Because quality is hard, just fundamentally, and it's hard to hide from when you don't have it. And I think consumers will, the orientation is going to be more towards core products, right? And then like master the core, and there's going to be less of this fringe craziness as a whole. I really believe that because I see the top quartile of consumers blocking out that noise right now. And those consumers ultimately lead the rest of the consumers because they are the ones that influence the other people in their communities. I also think like the voices talking about our category are very loud and they're actually getting educated. What I like, probably what you guys found early on is a lot of these people that are passionate about health and wellness actually didn't understand the supplement industry that well until recently. And they're finally starting to realize what this industry is and what it has been and what it could be. And the more people talking about quality, certifications, right? Sourcing matters, right? Like what you put in your body matters, the more that consumers ask those questions. And for me, like as a brand, the best thing I can do is help educate people on the industry, right? And not from a social media platform and all of that, but directly from people who are driving influence. And you do that by earning trust as a whole, because there are great brands out there other than Momentous, a lot of them, right? And the best thing you can do as a consumer is just find a great brand that is trusted, right? And it's like, I'm like, we'll compete to win your business whenever that is, but there are great brands out there and people should find those because the more consumers that go into great brands, the more we block the bad brands. And ultimately, like the goal that's rise all ships as a whole. So I think that's, where I think it's going. I like this transparency, certifications, like more and more and more, but also like part of what made our industry work is it was so complicated. Right. And it's like, it was so complicated that you just got lost in the noise. You're like, okay, I'll just buy it, and not really, there's no way to be like, well, because when you look at it, it's like, well, is it scientifically backed? Is this ingredient actually relevant? Right. And then is it in the actual right doses? Right. Okay. Those are two things that most consumers don't have any idea about. Right. Then number 3 is it's sourced from the right places, right? With the right purity, right? Is the raw ingredients. Is it right? Is it a low quality or is it a high quality protein, right? Is it digestible, right? More pure, less pure, more like all of those things play into it, which is this whole nother step because the label doesn't show purity, right? It doesn't. Like you look on the back of a difference between a whey protein concentrate and a whey protein isolate, it says 20 grams. It doesn't show the lactose and the milk fats and all these other things, the impurities that sit in whey protein concentrate that is filtered out in whey protein isolate or creatine monohydrate, right? It doesn't show the impurity levels, the creatinine and like the DHT and all of those things. That's not on labels. It's just creatine, 5 grams. And so I think so you have that. And then it comes down to like, okay, sourcing. And then it's like artificial flavors, artificial ingredients, like fillers, like all like things that might not be helping you do that. And then it's like all this certification noise, right? So it's like all these steps along the way and the consumers are like, but I was told I had to do vitamin D, magnesium, protein, right? Erythritol, like this greens product and that. And they're like, what? Like, so I think the noise and my industry has benefited from noise, right? And hype, right? And I think that, right? Specifically what Supco is doing, why when I heard about Supco, I was like, oh gosh, thank God. Right? Because you got like all that front end noise, efficacious dose, right? Sourcing, quality and certification, like all that stuff. Like some people need like a simple, like good or bad, and then they can choose a brand, right? Like you just need to weed through the 90% of the craziness that exists out there, but consumers have no idea. Like one of my favorite stories from my dad under the bus, right? Is my dad has been like an omega-3 user since like 1998, probably. Like huge into health and wellness. And And right, Momentous, here we are. We have this really great omega that we designed. And he's been buying omega-3, or he's been buying fish oil. Let me more accurately describe it, from the big box, right, store. And it's like, oh, I get 360 capsules, it's $25.99. And I was like, cool. And he's like, why? Like, why? And I'm like, let's do some label comparison. And the first thing is like, oh, this has 50 milligrams of omega-3. It has a gram of fish oil. Cool. Great. Like 1.5 grams ish of omega-3s is like the efficacious dose, right? I was like, you're good at math, 1.5, and it's like, how many pills you have to take? And then it's like, oh, wow. Right. And then you think about heavy metals in fish and the filtration, and is it an ester, or like, he had no idea. Right. And he's been in this, like, he reads more about this stuff than anybody I really know. And you're like, you might have just been thinking you're doing good, but not doing anything. Right. Because you're taking 200 milligrams of omega-3s a day, 4 pills. And you're like, I got my 4 grams of fish oil in, right? But not really realizing what mattered and what, like, when you look at a label, what matters. Cause he didn't know. He's like, I know fish oil is good. Right. And guess what? It was in an ester form, not a triglyceride form. Right. And he had like, that's not on the label. Like, nobody knows the difference of triglyceride or ester. Right. And for those of you listening, like, triglyceride is the natural form that's bioavailable, right? And ester is the form that you have to take fish oil into to concentrate it into a high dose omega-3s, but then you have to take it back to a triglyceride to make it highly bioavailable. It just happens to be that step from ester back to triglyceride is very expensive. But it's not on any label. Like, I mean, you can read it down, but consumers don't know. It's like, as a whole. So those are the things that I find just fascinating, as a whole. I'm like, I'm educating my dad, and it's like, that was a 10-minute conversation, right? And he had to hear it from me, and he had no idea. And like, nobody's got time for 10 minutes when they're walking in the big box. And so like, that's what I love about Supco, right? Is like, cut through the noise. And brands can't do it like Momentous, because we're part of the noise. So that's why I'm like, oh, beautiful.
Well, sitting here right now, so Momentous, your products, what is it that with all this that we're talking about, with the things that, are happening behind the scenes that consumers can't see, what's that takeaway that you want users to know about Momentous products they are never going to see on a label?
I think it's the effort that we go in from a sourcing and efficacy perspective, right? Like, we will overturn every single rock to continue to get better, right? I don't believe, right, where we are today is good enough, right? We will lead from the front and take chances and risks. Like, we will always bring products to market that meet our standards, and we will continue to try to find ways to increase those standards, right? Like, I will say, like we will unturn all stones. Like, we just launched the new Momentous creatine, and we've been using the highest quality creatine in the market, right? And we believe there could be better, right? We didn't know how or where, but we went out and built our own specification of creatine that had less impurities than anything else that had ever been commercialized, right? And that was an important step for us as a business. We took our number one selling product that was already using the highest quality creatine on the market, and we created all this chaos in our world to launch something that was better than that, right? But guess what? That meant we made it. We weren't using somebody else's. And that means we had to build this whole infrastructure to ensure that everything that we brought to market was what we said it was, right? Along every step of the process. And it created operational chaos that my team most likely will kill me someday over, because they're like, we fixed something that wasn't broke, but it wasn't the best. And that's our commitment to our customer. You won't see those things on the label because it's hard to describe on there. And I do believe, right, the dirty secret in our category is sourcing. Everybody's like, oh, it's just commoditized. And I'm like, everything starts there, right? It always starts at the top. And it's not, oh, I buy from a middleman, I don't know where it's from, right? Start with that. And that's incredibly important to who we are as a business. Yeah. And you don't see on the label that, right, we sell the 32 of 32 NFL teams. And that's not because we're built for athletes. It's because we built the best.
I love it. I love it. My final question for you, Jeff. I want to know one supplement that you cannot live without, and I want to know one that you think is flying under the radar that you wish more people knew about.
Oh man, these are hard ones. I'll give you, it might be the same one.
Okay.
We've been talking about a fiber product for a really long time. And it's just like, I don't know if we had the right to play in it. It's a sleepy market. It's like, what is it? And like, our advisors kept chirping like, hey, fiber's real. And like, backwards a little bit, we started hearing that about like, hey, creatine for cognitive, like it's coming, right? And it's like, okay, we took that wave and I was like, okay, whatever, fiber. My parents take fiber. Cool. Like it's an old person's product. I was like, I don't know. Fiber, I'm like, I wish somebody hit me over the head with a baseball bat and told me about it like 10 years ago, right? Very few products do you feel, right? Candidly, like almost none of our products do you feel right away. They're so gradual. Take fiber for 3 weeks and it will blow your mind, right? And you're like, it was this easy, right? And like the gut health that you feel, how you feel differently by just introducing a little bit more fiber into your diet is pretty incredible as a whole. And there's so much really cool research on it. And I mean, so do I think it's flying under the radar now? No, like everybody probably saw the same graph I did of like fiber now has been searched more than protein. And you're like, well, guess that cat's out of the bag. So I don't know if I can use it as one that's flying under the radar anymore, but fiber is the one product that I'm like, man, I wish I knew. Like, and it's very core, like creatine, omegas, and protein and fiber are very, very core in my world of what I do. Like I truly believe in that foundational floor. I think a product that flies under the radar and doesn't necessarily get the love that it always should. I mean, the omega-3s are big, but like the research on omega-3s is insane, right? And I think people kind of wave past it a little bit. And what I've learned about omega-3s in this business is very few are equal, right? And actually creating efficacious, right, like high quality omega-3 is very, very hard, and very few people have that. And I think a quality omega-3 for all ages is really lacking. It doesn't like creatine and protein and, you know, like those things, they're not sexy, but they're still getting a lot of love. But omega's not there yet, right? But like omega is like the research is irrefutable, and it has so much data behind it for brain health, heart health, inflammation. Like you just go down the list on there. So, and it's hard to get from your diet, really hard.
I believe it. Awesome. Someone who never wanted to get into supplements, but did it because he thought the space needed something better. CEO of Momentous, Jeff Byers, thank you so much for joining SupCo today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Jordan.